sorry. I was just looking at something.
Mhm.
Oh, jeez, my throat. My throat just went on me. Uh, now, I asked you last time if you'd speak a little bit for us, and this time I want you to remember that you have to write it down.
Mhm.
So, go ahead and give the folks at home just a little taste of it. But again, remember you have to write it down.
Ну, смотрите, все, что я хочу сказать, ты никогда не забываешь тех, кто тебе помог. Это все.
I will find this sometime. I double tapped. Okay, now I think I got this figured out. In any case, choosing to be a linguist, that's a very interesting career choice because you really don't hear of that very much, whether it be in the military or in the regular world. There isn't really all that many of them,
Mhm.
really. So, what is it exactly that led you in that direction? God.
Hey! Woo! So, um, that's kind of an interesting question. When I sat down with my recruiter, um, he asked me, "Do you want to be a nuke?" Which is a nuclear engineer for the Navy. And I flat out told him no. They make a lot of money, but I just did not want to do math. I'm more of a language arts, social studies kind of person. Like I can do math, and there's a lot of stuff about math that I adore, but engineering is not one of them. At least not in the sense of being around a nuclear reactor for hours on end. So I told him no, I don't want to be a nuke, but he immediately followed it. Well, we have this program for linguists. We have this rate. It's called, CTI, and you basically do some. He put it like this. He said you do some James Bond type stuff that I don't even know about, and I couldn't tell you about. Would you be interested in doing that? And I said, yeah, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. It was really just sheer happenstance because I would have been totally fine with just about anything that the recruiter offered to me. And he said, "Well, you have your choice of the matter. Like you absolutely can choose what you want to be doing with your naval career because you certainly have the ASVAB score for it, and we need people like you in the military now more than ever." And I said, I want to do the absolute most difficult thing that I can possibly do that is not nuclear engineering. And that basically led me down the road to becoming a linguist. And it is definitely true that you don't see many linguists either in the military or in the civilian world, in the normal world. But I think that's what makes me feel so blessed to be in the position that I am and to have had this opportunity given to me by God is that there aren't many people like me. So in a lot of ways, depending on how uh, God's will falls for me, I could potentially do something that not a lot of people get to do. And I already have gotten to do a lot of things that people don't often get to do.
Okay, got it this time. um, you make very good points, and I'm proud of you for going that extra mile there. because I always knew you had it in you. It's like I told you before. I always knew there was something special that was always in there, buried so far deep in there, underneath all that trouble. But it was in there, and I always believed it was in there. So it came out. It did. Um, but that was far, far into the future, if we ever get that far. Because, as we discussed last time, we are not promised another day. We are not promised another hour. Because, heck, you could walk out the door and be struck by a vehicle. I mean, we don't want to think about that, but it is 100% possible. So I want you to think about that, folks. Treat every minute, every second as though it could be your very last. Living for God is truly the only way that not only you can be happy, but that you can guarantee your eternal happiness. Now, going on to what could potentially be the future, are you going to, after your military career is over, because I'm assuming you don't plan to do this, like, until you're old and gray, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so would you intend to be using these skills outside of it?
Absolutely. In a word, absolutely. Learning languages is a wonderful thing, and being able to use them in any capacity is a wonderful thing. And even if I didn't end up using the language skills that I've acquired, there's still so much that the military has taught me already, and there's so much that I'm already bound to learn throughout the duration of my service that I could apply practically to other aspects of my life, and in a lot of ways I already have. Even as something as simple as folding your clothes in a certain way, which is something, believe it or not, that they teach you how to do in boot camp. And it's a very, very particular way because you get graded on it. It's as weird as that sounds. That's absolutely true. Being able to write legibly in an official document, they teach you how to do that. And that, especially in the Navy, is super important, because we keep logs of everything, and they're not typed, they're always handwritten. So being able to just write legibly and write in proper language, proper nomenclature, like, there are these skills that you don't even think about it. You take them for granted a lot, if you're serving, but they're skills that find application in a surprising number of ways outside of the realm of military life, and it's astounding, honestly. But to your point, to kind of bring it back to what you were asking, for what I plan to do after my service is over, I don't have a definite answer, but I do know for certain that I want to involve myself as much as possible in continuing to learn languages and continuing to use the skills that I've been taught in whatever way God leads me to use them.
No, I was just sitting here thinking, one, high school sure didn't help you with writing at all. Two, I was also thinking the way that you articulate yourself, the way that you speak, and the way that you enunciate. You might be a good speech therapist, helping kids such as myself, I mean, you can tell the way I speak isn't exactly, but there's nothing wrong with it. But you can tell it's not exactly, shall we say, quote unquote, normal. And it's because of my stroke that I had at birth, my cerebral palsy, but all kinds of things like that. But speech therapy is incredibly important. But with your language skills, I could see you being able to have some sort of influence there if you should choose to go somewhere in that direction. I mean, it's just a little thought, you know.
That's actually really interesting. I hadn't actually considered that, but that's very, very. I like that, honestly. Just even as a thought, and not necessarily yet as a serious consideration. I really do like that. It's interesting. My mom, um, first, I didn't always enunciate and articulate myself as I do now. I used to be a child that thought at a million miles a minute, and my words would have a tough time catching up to my thoughts, what was going on up here. And so I would trip over my words almost as badly as I tripped over my own 2 feet when I was little. Um, so the way that I talk now is a result of me kind of internalizing what was told to me, because my mom always said, like, you need to slow down when you talk because people can't understand you. um it was a result of me finally internalizing that, figuring that out, and then making steps to sort of refine um what I want to say, and to try to say it as clearly and as concisely as possible. And I guess like a secondary thing that sort of led to that was, um I apologize if we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here.
This is where you and I.
Yep, this is, um but I think I'll tie this back into trying to deliver messages for the listeners. Sometimes we talk and we say things that we don't really mean to say. And I've certainly been no different. I've gotten myself in so much trouble over the years over saying things and then having to backtrack and try to do damage control, and it just ends up being this big mess of confusion and awfully put together thoughts that verge on incoherence. And so taking the time to sort of think at least a little bit about what you want to say before you say it, it can make the difference between harming somebody and helping them.
Um,
There you go. There we go.
In case you guys don't know what I'm doing, muting one mic and going to another one. But sometimes my fingers aren't working. Anyway, all of this, our practice was last night, and you should have heard us. It was the most random, incoherent thing, but it was fantastic. But anyhow, so that all came back together, and that actually brings us to something of a roundabout thing that I wanted to discuss next, is how to be yourself and not worry about what the world thinks about it. Now, as for those of you that are watching this and are also a follower of my TikTok account, you know full well my love of anime and all of that because I always have one of my posters in every single one of the videos, and I make a very good point to put them in every video because, one, I'm not ashamed of it and I want everybody to know it. Two, I want you to know that it is okay to express yourself no matter what anybody thinks of it.
I think that's something that I had to struggle a little bit with, especially in my more formative years. I would say like high school and junior high. It was always about like what shoes you wore, what clothes you wore, how your hair looked, and everything like that. And it wasn't actually until I met Tori and I started hanging out with her and her family that I realized that being the way that the world at large wants me to be really kind of sucks. It really sucks. It's so restrictive and it's so. I'll just put it like this. It's no wonder kids today are like they act as they do. They it seems as though like the entire world is depressed and it's all because like there's just this big expectation to fit into this certain cookie cutter mold, and you can't stray or deviate at all from that mold once you're in it. But so many of the people that I surround myself with are absolutely bonkers in the best possible way. We are unabashedly ourselves, especially okay. Unabashedly ourselves in the truest sense of the word, especially when we are around each other. And to me, that is where the beauty in my friendships and just the beauty in the people that I've met lay, is that they are true to themselves. They don't lie to themselves, and they don't try to placate to the world that really honestly couldn't care less about them. I think that is a very, very important message to get across, for people that might be struggling with this issue of identity, this crisis of identity, is to just exist as you are, as God made you to be, and screw what anybody else thinks of you or says of you.
Now, we have to preface this with a little bit of a disclaimer because I also hear from a lot of people that say because God made me this way, I am allowed to do this and this and this because I'm made this way, so I can feel this way. Well, let me tell you guys, He did not make you sinful. Your flesh makes you sinful. God cannot make sin because God is sinless. Now, I think you know the kinds of sin we're going to be talking about. And we hear it all the time because in this certain communities, they always go into the excuse that I was made this way, so I should be able to do what I want in this specific way. So why is it that you are telling me that there's something wrong with me when God made me this way? Well, we're not telling you that there's something wrong with you. Quite the contrary. We're telling you that what your sin is what is wrong.
Mhm.
Not you. Very specifically, clearly, the sinfulness is very clearly stated. Your Bible is the guide. You can't cherry pick words, verses, and match them to what you do and do not want to do. You have to take the whole thing, not just what you want to do or what you want. You can't do it to fit your own lifestyle.
Mhm.
You can't just choose I want to do this and not this. So I think you could start elaborating here.
That is a excellent point that you bring up. Is that people oftentimes do cherry pick um, verses, or they cherry pick these concepts that do have a point by themselves, yes, but they also are incomplete without the rest of the context, without the rest of the word to surround it and give it true meaning. They cherry pick all of these concepts that cannot quite exist on their own in a vacuum from the Bible, and they say, well, it says this, so that means that I'm allowed to do this. Well, not quite, as you said, right? And there is a distinction to be made between being yourself insofar as your personality and who you are as a person is, and then doing that which your flesh commands you to do, because as you mentioned, these bodies are not our own. We were made of dust and dirt and ash, and we are essentially like, these bodies are on lease. We don't take them with us to heaven. We take our spirits to heaven, our souls and our spirits to heaven. These are on lease. We're essentially kind of renting the body out for 80 or so years. And they have a tendency to want to do things in a certain way as a result of them not being necessarily fully sinless. And it is through the Holy Spirit that God gifted us. Whenever Jesus ascended to heaven, we were given the gift of the Holy Spirit, which is the part of the Trinity, the part of God that rests in all of us. Should we choose to accept it, we must use that to guide us, and we must use that to temper our more base sinful nature. Because if we don't, then that's how you get those people, or that's how you run into that sort of circumstance where you're trying to be yourself, but really you're just living in sin and you're mired in it. And I've definitely had that sort of experience before I rediscovered my faith, and before I truly found what faith was. I was definitely that way, and it's not fun. It's not fun at all.
Yeah, we want to also say, even though we are Christians, we are not perfect by any means. In fact, when you become Christian, we have the tendency to become more sinful than ever, because we are attacked from all directions by the one who first deceived the first ever humans. And because we have now aligned ourselves with God, now Satan, the original cause of sin, is going to do everything that he possibly can to guide us away from God. So we are being attacked in every way possible, So we are going to be more subjected to sin than ever before. So more than likely, we sin more than those who do not believe. So this image that non-believers have of us, that we are these perfect people, is so far from the truth. In fact, we are probably worse than you are. But it's in that faith that we have. We know that no matter how screwed up we are, and trust me, we are, that all we need to do is ask for the forgiveness and do better. Do better, ask for His help, not only to forgive the sin, but also to help us guard against it, that we might better ourselves. And that is, it's a big process. Because, trust me, I've done many things I am certainly not proud of, over and over and over and over. And every time I say I'm not going to do it again, I did it again and again and again and again. So, if you're having this struggle, trust me, you're not alone. Every single one of us, he and I very much included, we struggle every single day. And you don't have to be ashamed if you're going through this, because each and every one of us go through this.
And you actually, you just made me think of the point that I wanted to say much earlier. Even in the Old Testament, there are countless examples of men and followers of God, or people who would otherwise be considered followers of God, who did very bad things, and yet they're still in the kingdom of heaven. We had Paul, he was a human trafficker. David sent his best friend to die so that he could marry his best friend's wife. There are all of these, and like, there are examples of, especially in the Old Testament, like we touched on earlier, there would be like David's army, or you know, other Jewish armies. They would raze an entire city to the ground, and like there definitely are instances where I'll slip up even just the tiniest little bit, and I'll get on myself about it. And I have to really put this into perspective, that, you know, all of these men are great men. Like, there's no denying that King David is in the kingdom of heaven, King Solomon's in the kingdom of heaven, Paul the Apostle is in the kingdom of heaven. And I have to remember that, like, they were once not perfect, but through their belief in God, and in particular in Paul's belief in Jesus, they were redeemed from their faith. And I think you touched on this point. Whenever we become believers, everything that we do is amplified. All of the sin, I think, a lot of the times what it is when we become believers now, every mistake that we make, every time we go against God's teachings, even if it's just the tiniest bit, it becomes magnified, manifold, just by the fact that we're now cognizant of it being a sin. And so we have that tendency to sort of beat ourselves up over. At least I do. I know I do. I'm my own worst critic by a mile. I will put a pinky toe out of line, and I'll kick myself for it for a week straight, and I'll really dwell on it. And something that we as Christians definitely do need to learn is the power not to just forgive others, but to forgive ourselves. Because a lot of the times we'll hold on to those mistakes that we make for so long, and we'll kind of use it against ourselves, and we'll kind of beat ourselves up over it. But I think that there needs to be an understanding that we do need to forgive ourselves for a lot of things, and that's not, again, as a disclaimer, that's not a green light to just go and be terrible people so that we can forgive ourselves and it's all okay. No, there still needs to be a measure of accountability, but it's just when that measure of accountability is not enough, we do need to forgive ourselves, and we do need to take the steps to make sure that we do our best to not sin in that manner again.